think that the credit card vendors will have that. But the study that I'm doing that I want to present today, I unfortunately don't have that information. But I would say that the major credit card processing companies would be very interested in knowing what business. But yeah, the number one issue here is the payment credit card numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
As an example, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Fiance
Got
home.
Right.
The credit card company called her up.
Right.
Turns out that her credit card was being used in France to buy something. Somebody had gotten her information, made their own credit card, and was doing stuff. She had made a purchase locally, so they said, hey, there's a problem.
Right, a mismatch.
And the only thing we can think of is she's been doing some shopping through some boutique small websites that were doing specialty products. And
it got pilfered. Yeah.
And somebody broke into got credit card numbers from them.
Right, but the credit card companies, the fact that they called is a good thing.
Oh,
like I might get a call this evening because the fact that I don't shop too much in California might trigger something. And that has happened. It's a huge nuisance for me because if you live in Hawaii and will go to any other state, your credit card, my credit card generally gets. But I take that as a good thing. but these are again more. The reason for these scenarios was just to validate a study that I did a while ago, which had nothing to do with vendors, and I was not a shredding company or anything like that. But just to set it in context, the security that we're talking about here is somewhat similar to large businesses. The technology, underlying technology, which is credit card processing, for example, is the same. And what I highlighted and read is that it's a combination of business process, policies or procedures, or lack of technology and leadership styles that we're talking of. The confluence of these things is the issue. The fact that small business owners have the time for something and not for something else. If you're a techie in a small business, you may do something right, but not the other thing right. Yes, ma'am?
Well, it's expensive too, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I was a small business person, for me, the margin, how much money I made is how much money went into my bank.
Yeah, and there's always of the balance or the trade-off between security and convenience.
Right.
I have one particular client that doesn't want to use secure passwords because it's
inconvenient.
Too inconvenient.
Yeah. Sure. And
this is at the Windows desktop in the office, and at least they're behind locked doors when
Right. So
still.
So the point is there is a general lack of concern and security issues, and rather than being judgmental, having been a small business owner myself, I understand that, which is part of the thing. There's the ease of doing business versus the risk of a catastrophic failure or risk of insanity. It's that balancing act. And some of us may be more risk averse, some of us may not be risk averse. So the last point, in general, there's a lack of concern about the lack of display of concern about security issues. Okay, and this is just a list of the security problems that was on these previous scenarios, and you could just read this and let me know if anything's missing or if anything has changed. I know there's a lot of devices security issues that have come up because now we carry information, our passwords in our devices, for example. If any of us store passwords in a contact list, well, that contact list is replicated on a phone, right? And so this kind of stuff, the devices has proliferated the data that businesses used to have in a hard disk now more. But these are typical security problems that are common, not just to small business, but to any business. But what's special about it? Some of these things are salient points about small businesses. There's a tendency to outsource. There's a tendency to put technical stuff to some technical guy or gal, outsourcing person. There's very basic policies and procedures, if any, to data recovery, information security. There's a lot of reliance on automated software like antivirus. I just plug and play kind of a thing. And data corruption, lost issue. If you have, let's say your hard disk is corrupted. You just take it to a store, right? And assume that you get that there's no pilferation of the data in that store. So these are some issues about small business. Anything that I've missed? Anything that you'd find from your experience that?
covers it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, times have changed. They are changing. Yes.
Is this implying basically, basically implies that a business owner is not technically savvy, therefore he, as much as possible, passes off the responsibility of the security to something else, i.e. antivirus software, the cloud, etc., and they don't really do much of the local management, hopefully automatic backups on their operating system, etc.?
And to some extent, yes, to some extent that makes sense, because if you're focused on running a business, you have only so much of time to focus on things that you don't have a competency for or interest for. So to some extent, automated security makes sense to the small business owner. On the other hand, throwing it without realizing the risks of what it involves is the trade-off. For example, there is a risk of storing it in cloud, right? There's a risk of that, and what the presentation here involves is just being knowledgeable on the risk. I'm not expecting the small business owner to be a technically proficient person eventually. In the end, they will do what it takes to make that business run, which could have nothing to do with technology. Technology could be just an enabler. Yes.
Well, a lot of my students though are working in small businesses.
Right.
And so they come to me and they ask for guidance of some sort.
Right.
So if I can get anything from this to help them, to give them guidance, I'll be better off.
Yeah, and Hawaii has about we have no large industry except for hospitality, as you probably know, and even that is not a large industry. And so we're a state surrounded by small businesses, and most of my students as well are exactly the same, in the same situation. So getting back to the nuts and bolts of this presentation, the study that I designed was small business in Hawaii, which is really small, 25. You're talking of the laundromat owner, Chinese store, the stuff you see in the street, bento owner, things like that. And for them, technology is as good as it is. It's an enabling tool. You're not in it for technology. They're in it mostly to make money, make a living, and pay the bills. So I think this was a good study, being a technology professional, to look into non-technology people using technology for whatever it's worth. And again, I think that's your key point you made. It has to be cost-effective and realistic. Now, there's always a cost issue. You can spend all the money and then not realize what you get back. What I tried, there are no end of studies that say from vendors, and I think that tackle the technology part. That says, you got to implement this checklists and stuff like that. Being a small businessman, I didn't follow all the checklists. I mean, you do as much as you can, and then you don't. So the study, what I tried to see was what are some of your leadership styles? What are some of the soft skills that you need to develop as a business owner to kind of maximize your potential in the cybersecurity world? In other words, you don't have to be a techie and a tech security professional, but at least you need to raise your level of awareness, competencies, and your own leadership skills so that you can guide other people to do what makes sense, as opposed to just throw it over the wall and expect some other security professional to do a job for you. So that was the essence of the study. It was quite diverse in the sense we went through 14 security problems, quite a range. Okay, as you can see, the insider abuse, which is your employee doing something, outsider access. Some of this may be common, you went through virus, software problems, power failure, natural disaster, data integrity, and these are all different things. Integrity, secrecy, availability are very different things. And transaction integrity, which is, I think, what you mentioned is, it was a valid transaction but done by someone else. And then there could be just plain errors. There could be just an error in user errors. I could go into Starbucks and put in my password without realizing that I'm being spoofed. It could be just plain mistakes, and then that can happen to anybody. So there was quite a range of security problems, and then there was a range of leadership styles. Leadership styles are of different types, and I didn't know much about this before I got into the study, but because I assumed, I guess, one or the other. You have to be a visionary or you're an absolute useless person. But there are various gradations here. There's the visionary dynamic owner. There are people who are transactional, cost control types. And then there's the person who just like, okay, you know, whatever happens. You know, in Hawaii, you get more of the passive, you know, it's an easy lifestyle. So we tend to assume people are passive avoidant. But there are various leadership styles, and sometimes we adopt more than one style, in other words. Okay. This has nothing to do with technology, by the way. This has to do with just your intrinsic abilities to handle a business. Is that clear? So I was trying to see how the style or leadership style of a business owner impacted the ability to handle, you know, security issues. Of course, there's a field that you can't be passive avoided. I mean, there was something that was obvious, right? I mean, you couldn't be laissez-faire and passive avoidant and expect your. I mean, that would be just luck. But the thing was, which security trait was more tuned than others, and that's really the point of the idea of the study. These are some findings that have, again, nothing to do with any vendor. So take them for what it is. This was small businesses responding to me. And what this kind of tells you is who accesses the data in a small business of less than 25 people. Okay? And if you quickly eyeball it, you'll see quite a lot of people, 16% are contractors, external people. So there's a little bit of risk in that. Of course, full-time employees need to access the list here. So this access to data is a critical component of security threats and issues. And this is just a graphical version of this. Policies and procedures. The highest number, data recovery, is 50%. So in other words, the implication is that there was half the people didn't have any. Okay. And then as you go down the list, you'll find some of the continuity policies, emergency response team. There was even less of that. Okay. And this is your 25 person employee. Okay, so I went into quite a few of these things. Now I realize that a small business owner is not going to have all these policies in place. But what I wanted to do in my study was actually try to go and see if any of them had any of these, because none of these things are unimportant or unnecessary. Okay, and these are all different. The computer, for example, this computer use and misuse policy is very common in big corporations, right? But in a small company, you could also have a role of the owner and the IT person and a different access role of a contractor, for example. So there's no reason why some of these things can't be there in a small company. Yes?
Did you separate your data into like daily data and historical data, like customer records that employees had access to versus the data of an individual transaction of the day?
No,
you know
that's interesting.
Some that customers would, I mean, the employees wouldn't have access to your daily data, but not necessarily the computers and the files of.
Assuming they're different. Yeah. But if you know, I was using a lot of people who use things like Quicken Books, Quicken Online, which is your typical small business tool.
That's your accounting software.
Your accounting software and a customer database. The transactional software is your point of sale system or any small system that you may have had. Oftentimes it was, you know, either stored on site, it was or outsourced to another vendor. I mean, in Hawaii we have you know, IT companies which is essentially take over the sales system of these small businesses. They manage 50 companies at one time, and so they store all the data in their little shop. So what some of these you know, these say is the access to that data. But no, I didn't do that. But that's interesting, you know, that you separate that. But I think what this shows is the fact that, you know, that policies and procedures are essentially non-existent for a large number of these policies.
Half or more.
Yeah. Now, this slide focuses on the technologies that are in place, and some of the ones in green are not surprising. This is the stuff you can, what I call the Office Max stuff. You can go to any tech store and buy the things in green, I think. But the rest of the stuff is where it takes a little bit of work and a little bit of expertise. And I went through each of these things just to make sure that I actually had numbers. You don't need to do a study to figure out that 96% would be antivirus. The study was for these numbers to kind of enumerate the fact that people either didn't know what data segmentation meant or media DDoSes are, and of course you don't have dial-back modems anymore. But you know, redundant systems, facility access control, and I went into pretty much both perimeter security, which is facilities access control, which could be a swipe card, for example, and all sorts of stuff like that.
Or just sending out keys.
Right. And so again, what this data shows is that there is a tendency to automate the technology, which is of course understandable, as opposed to use people's time to do some of the other implementing. Yes.
So, apropos, tell me what you mean by data segmentation. Is that limiting access of kinds of data to different people? Is that
right. Okay. Basically, it could be segmenting your accounting data, your payroll data. You know, it's segmenting your data based on access. Yes.
On the same light, what are you defining as encryption? Encrypting your files or encrypting the communication between
both
files? Like if a network uses a wireless environment, then they...
Yeah. I think I used, in this study, it was the access. But I can see the point of it, you know, I mean, I do see the point of encrypting the storage system itself.
You've got encryption and system access control right up against each other.
Right.
I would expect encryption to mean, you know, encrypting storage rather than connection.
Well,
because system access control is closer to the
right.
wireless.
But an encryption, yeah. But an encryption, right? There is some overlap in some of these things, and I think, you know, some of especially this encryption, but encryption could be both. I mean, it could be encrypting of the wireless information of the actual protocol itself. And you know, and so again, this is just a chart, and as you can see, what I try to do is try to see how much of the technologies that were implemented were automated, cost-effective technology versus something that was process-intensive. Data importance, and the reason for this is what is the value of the data that a small business values? How important is this data to you? Okay, and customer data, privacy data was marked a little higher than some of the others. And this is a small business. Now, in a large business, the competitive data, this might be a lot higher. These might be a lot higher. But for a small business, your customer Rolodex or your customer data is critical. Okay. These are some of the experiences that I got. And sometimes, you know, in studies you get counterintuitive results, which is fine. Very few people actually reported problems. You know, if you see the results, you'll see that 20% actually said, "Oh, that I lost something," and so I took it to mean that that sometimes, or at least for the study, nothing happened, and that small businesses just didn't have, 80% of small businesses did not have that data corruption or partial loss. So in some ways it's fine, you know, and that's the cost effectiveness issue, is why invest in something when nothing's going to happen, okay? So at least based on my study, these are the numbers, these are the numbers of people who had info security experiences or bad experiences, okay? Now, what this doesn't say is the impact of it, like how much did this cost? So for like 12% of this, they may have had an experience, but what was the impact? Yes.
I'm sorry, maybe you already covered this, but the information you have, it's all self-reported.
Yes.
Is any of it verified?
verified.
Like independently.
People, they said that they had no data corruption, they had no problems with malicious software. A lot of people don't know
What that means.
that they have a problem with malicious software because they're ignorant of the situation.
That happens to that. But this is where they leak. No.
Yeah.
Data corrupted, partially lost. Yeah. Data corrupted, partially lost. I would say, most likely, their computer died.
I hear you.
And they lost their stuff.
It's sometimes hard to do a technology survey with people who are non-technical, and you try to make the survey as understandable as possible, and you hope to get the best results. But on the other hand, I can't be coaching them or telling them about it, in great detail.
I didn't know whether maybe you had done, a verification where you went and get a virus scan on their machine, or just, something like that.
No, this was more or less a survey on users who were distributed across the state. I did some cross-checking with focus groups and things like that to validate some of this data. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to sweep across people who are in remote locations, whom I had no contact with, who could essentially report back the results to me. And like I said, this slide was a little non-intuitive in the sense that a lot of people didn't report they had problems. So, sometimes you see the vendor slides and you see these staggering numbers, 67, big. Yeah. And so for me, this was somewhat comforting. But what this didn't tell is the impact of the loss. So for example, these 18% may have had somewhat significant damage to their business.
And it's anonymous, or?
Yes, it was anonymous.
And you can see a fairly obvious correlation between the top incident there.
Right.
Right. And the fact that I think the top security procedures they implemented was, I think, essentially backup.
That's right. So I mean, there's definitely a correlation between that and this one.
The data recovery.
Right at the top. Right. Another thing. So the data corruption, data issues was the big one. And the point over here is, in all the findings, what I try to say is whether this is cost effective, whether this is realistic, and whether you're proactive. And these are the response plans that people kind of inferred that this was important to them. An emergency response plan, a computer use and misuse policy, and information security policies. These are the policies and procedures that were considered most important. The response plan was largely an outsourced response plan. So it was like, we'd like to outsource a computer response plan. Not do it ourselves, but to have someone else do it for us in case there was an emergency. And the use and misuse policy was an internal policy, and security policy was an internal policy. Okay. These are the list of, again, the technologies that were either used or they wanted to be, the top 5. And intrusion detection systems is very interesting that it ended up there. But I would say the top 3 are the ones that are the most common. And then the reason, to answer your question, what I always ask myself is it cost effective? Is it easy to install and update? And does it do preventative stuff as opposed to just react? Does it prevent problems? Okay. So now coming to the interesting part. So the survey, the leadership survey that I used had the result of this thing was the transactional leadership style, which is essentially a person who is aware of these issues but not necessarily an expert, was the one that bubbled up to the top. Okay, and active management, by exception, was the attribute that was the highest in terms of correlation. And what does this mean? What this essentially means is that the small business owner who is actively running his or her business but looking for exceptions or warning signs was essentially, based on this study, most in control of their security problems. Okay, and this is not the transformational visionary and the passive avoidant didn't show significant correlation. So this is a lesson for business owners who are, let's say, non-technology based, and don't have to be technology based, who need to develop certain leadership styles, leadership skills to stay essentially in business with cyber threats. Okay, and so what is active management by exception? It's like you don't have to be on top of every information security issue or concern or virus attack or anything, but look for the flags, look for the exceptions, look for the things that happen as we go along. Okay, and then the other two attributes of thing was idealized influence, proactive guidance to people who could help you, and contingent reward, which is a way of saying is reward the people who are vigilant and actually do safe computing practices. Okay, so leadership styles. I went into about 10 attributes of leadership. Okay, all the way from visionary to the very people who are passive avoidant, and these are the traits, specific traits, and these are different from each other, that stood out as traits that are relevant for a small business owner in a cybersecurity situation. Okay? What do you think of this?
One of the things that struck me there is that the transactional leadership style
yes.
was more correlated with, I guess, identifying problems. Is that what it was? Is that what you meant by that?
Is identifying the warning signs. See,
yeah.
A small business owner who runs, let's say, a dentist shop doesn't necessarily understand all the technology implication parameters, but if they are aware of the issues and trends and are looking for signs, then they're transactionally oriented and they're actively managed by exceptions. They look for exceptions and abnormal behavior. For example, credit cards or anything that comes from another country. You know, those are exceptions that are obvious. Okay? And so that trait, that leadership trait, is something that either can be learned or something that can be emphasized. As opposed to learning all the technology books on cybersecurity, for example, which you know is not practical. People just will not spend that time in becoming technology professionals if you're running a small business. And then the other two things are also important in the sense that you know, when you're a small business, you essentially leverage other resources. You have to be dependent on someone else, right? And so the influence, your influence on the IT person should be in such a way that you don't throw over the responsibility to them without realizing your dependencies or the risks that you are on them. And then the contingent reward is a little obvious, is rewarding employees for actually preventing problems. Okay?
Nice.
So it's a combination of these leadership traits that, and this is not accidental. Leadership traits aren't developed just like that, and you're not necessarily natural in these things. These are things you have to be aware of and something you have to train yourself to do. And you know, the situation is not, the people we're talking about is not us from the business. These are people who don't know technology.
I mean, the other thing that strikes me is that the transformational leadership style and the passive avoidant, neither of those I would expect to be particularly detail-oriented.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a visionary, you're looking at the big picture rather than you're giving priority to that over the day-to-day details.
Yeah.
So hence you're actually more likely, I would say, to avoid details such as, okay, well, did I lose data today?
That's one perception, and I'm not against any of the styles. I think this study is focused on just linking cybersecurity issues with certain styles.
Okay.
So you know, and that's the essence of it. It's a funnel that I'm sure we've seen these issues that combines procedures of a lack of technology and leadership. And then, you know, I put this whole thing here just so that you can read it before you go to lunch, is don't scrimp on the IT guy. And I like what they said, that great pilots earn their entire salary on one dangerous flight a year. The same could be said about the good IT project, et cetera, et cetera. And this, And the last presentation, I don't know how many of you were here. I was supposed to go to the NIST conference that got canceled. I got stuck in New York. So I can relate to this statement pretty well. And I'm assuming it's true. And I'm assuming this did happen a few months ago. So
Nice.
Some of the study results, you know, and if the owner actually had displayed some of the traits that we were talking about, then they would have probably hired another IT guy or gal for the next hurricane. And so it's good to know that certain companies have actually realized the need for this and are taking it seriously. The last slide. Any questions, comments, feedback? Anything that you'd like to add? I know this research is ongoing because the nature of the security landscape is changing. It's getting easier for small business owners to actually learn about security as well. That's a good thing too. Cloud computing is taking a lot of the data away from point A to point B. That's helping some of the natural disaster scenario.
Well, thank you. This is particularly valuable for me because I'm a part-time instructor and I divide my time between training students and acting as a consultant to small businesses, which is, of course, most businesses.
So, in a few years from now, how would you view the landscape towards small businesses? What are some of the new threats to small business security that you would list? Let's say
well, mobile computing, I think, is one of the, because you're carrying around a small device that you can lose,
right?
Or that could be stolen.
And you have a locked password, or you
have
don't.
Locked, or not. Yeah, that's the. To me, that's
right.
That's
and we don't encrypt our phones, the storage system.
I mean, how many people put a password on the phone, for example,
right? Okay.
And have critical data such as your contact list is going to be in your phone, for example.
So one of the things I'm interested in, for example, is the fact that what do we do when we give our phones away?
Clear them.
Just how
you clear them? Really?
Actually, I don't give them away. They go to a family member.
Okay, right. Yeah, the smashing part is really how it works. But we give our phones away, we sell them, and things like that. And oftentimes when we buy phones from other people, we get the entire contact list of
that interests me. For me, it's going to be a point that I plan to investigate more closely. I've heard, for example, without having investigated it further, that some phones are difficult to erase. That even if you do the recommended procedure to erase the data on the phone, it doesn't necessarily get rid of it.
Okay. Yeah. So devices and mobile computing are definitely something as they get easier, they are an issue.
Yeah. Back in the old days, on your hard drives, and these are hard drives.
Right. I agree.
When you did an erase function, all it did was change the first character in the file name.
Right.
So you didn't have a pointer that would see it, but there were programs out there that could recover that.
Yeah.
Sure. And now you have to make several passes and DDoS and hopefully physically destruct the issue.
All that kid Lasco or whatever that unfortunately went crazy and killed all his kids. They said that he smashed his hard drives on his computers, and the FBI couldn't recover anything from his computers.
Oh, I see.
He was a geek.
Oh, I see. Adam Lanza.
Yeah, Lanza, whatever. But he was tech savvy enough that where he went in and hammered and screwdrivered his hard drives, and
I see.
The FBI was mad because they couldn't get anything off of them.
Okay.
Well, I would agree with his remark about mobile devices, and there's a lot of, if you want to know whether people can get stuff off their phone, there's a lot of forensic tools for recovering. There's a whole basically a Unix distribution called Mobisec, which is designed specifically for doing mobile security.
For Android or any. I see. Okay.
And in fact, there's not a lot of security with any of this stuff. Either you're open to having your apps give your information away, or with the Android phones or with the iPhones, you have Apple giving their contact lists away to people on Facebook.
I had a retired policeman who was into forensics come in on my computer. He said, "Here, let me show you how this stuff works." I just couldn't believe how much information he pulled out of that. Of course, he wrote briefs, for people, like if you're accused of, child pornography, he could go in there and tell you, well, he was on that page for 5 seconds and then he left, or he spent 30 minutes there. And that would be a difference on whether he should be charged or not, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But boy, the kind of information that those guys can get out of a computer.
Right.
Works on anything.
Okay. Well, I mean, in conclusion, what I'd like to ask you all, and I know we have just a few minutes, and two of us have joined them. So let me ask Corinne and Jay, who just, this talk was about cybersecurity as a small business professional, and this is like a real small business. In Hawaii, for example, it's less than 25%. There is an issue of convenience, of like, I want to make money and pay the bills versus spend all my time learning about information security and get CAE 2 certification and all that stuff. So how would you be a functional small business person and yet be secure enough?
So California is, if you mirror and think that California is based on small businesses,
right.
Probably its large core of economy is based on that. And a lot of them are open to this problem. And when a few years ago, we actually went out and created a small business Chancellor for them to look at and ask themselves. It was short. It was, if you open the book, it's 3 pages, so 4 pages. They didn't want anything that was big, because nobody could look at it.
Right.
And it had 6 bullets on each page.
Okay.
There was something that was easy to
digest,
flip and look at it. Are you doing this? And 1, 2, 3. If not, you're open to 1, 2, 3. And so it sort of gave that very figure. And if you are interested, you should join. We are an NSF project, and we had awareness on these days and focus on X, Y, Z. And it was interesting. A lot of them said, "Oh, you don't do any of that. They can take this. They can do that one. Do you?" And it was very interesting. Open eyes. A lot of them were one person running, so they couldn't
right.
do it.
Sure. Exactly.
But now that I'm a center, that would be something that I could look into focus of future. We're working with academia right now, but for small businesses to actually do a webinar, and I now have the infrastructure. I did not have that few years ago. But that would be something that the small businesses would be. If you said 1 hour at lunchtime, you don't have to leave your business, they would do it. Otherwise, they are not going to come to you. They are not going to leave their business.
Absolutely. Right.
So one thing we've done,
totally agree.
We've actually had requests to do security assessments from small businesses. So as a student project, so the students can earn credit. It has to be, it's not open to any student, it has to be a student that I choose to do it. Also, I've done a few in the area. So one pathway that they could take is, what I see is these small businesses, they don't have the resources and they're never going to figure it out anyway. So if they have somebody that can tell them, here's what we checked, this is what we found, and this is how you fixed it, you may get more of them that are interested in doing something like this. I found when I did a security assessment of a business that had, they probably had like 25 people. Half the stuff I told them they didn't want to hear.
Yep.
They weren't interested in doing it.
And the point of this was exactly the leadership traits that would have them listening to you. We're out of time. Thank you very much for your participation and involvement here. And hope this was useful.